Presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders also touched on the mental health issue during a town hall event in Vista tonight.
Sanders also focused on immigration issues, the economy, health care, and education. News 8's Richard Allyn is live in Vista with more on Sanders' message to his followers. Richard?
Well, that's right. This town hall focused mostly on immigrant workers' issues. However, Senator Sanders fielded a host of other questions and comments, ranging from the need to raise the minimum wage, reform the prison system, and also provide free health care and free college education for everybody. Hundreds packed this community center in Vista Monday evening, where Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, running for the Democratic presidential nomination, led a town hall primarily on immigration issues.
Move forward toward comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship.
Speaker after speaker presented their own experiences as immigrants.
Let's work hard and let's make the change. Si se puede. Yes, we can.
One grandmother spoke out against the government's treatment of the children of undocumented immigrants seeking asylum.
You cannot have beautiful angels in cages. They belong to their parents.
America is not and must never be about putting children in cages.
Sanders also took President Trump to task for his immigration and border policies.
We have a president of the United States who is a racist, who is a xenophobe, who is a sexist, who is a religious bigot, and who is a pathological liar.
Carlsbad resident Casey Margus, who survived the Las Vegas mass shooting last year, says she now suffers from PTSD.
I can't afford to see a therapist. It's just not possible. I'd have to pay out of pocket.
So when we talk about Medicare for all, it absolutely, positively means mental health care as well.
And Senator Sanders maintains his busy schedule. Tomorrow he'll stay in Southern California, touring a homeless shelter in Los Angeles and also hosting another rally tomorrow night in Long Beach. Barbara Lee?
Richard, thank you.